Have you ever woken up from a dream so real it made your heart race? Now imagine if that dream was not just a dream. Imagine it was a warning, a cry from something deep and unseen. That dream could save a life, or it could destroy everything. Grace was just a poor maid. She cleaned floors and washed dishes in a billionaire's mansion. No one listened to her. No one cared about what she saw or felt. But one night, she had a dream. In that dream, she saw her boss Daniel Rivers lying cold on the ground. He had been poisoned. He was dying. And no one around him knew the truth. When Grace woke up, her hands were shaking. Her heart was heavy. She wanted to forget it, but something told her she had to speak. What she did next changed everything. She saved a life, but she also uncovered a secret so dark it could break a family and tear apart an empire. This is the story of a poor maid, a deadly betrayal, and a dream that refused to be silent. The morning sun rose over the wealthy neighborhoods of Brentwood, California. The golden light touched the white walls and glass windows of the Rivers estate. Birds chirped gently as the wind danced through the trees. But deep inside the mansion, something more ordinary was unfolding. A young woman named Grace was sweeping the floor of the grand marble hallway. Grace Johnson was 24 years old. She had grown up in a small town in Alabama. Her mother had passed away when she was just 12. Her father had lost his job at a factory and never recovered from the pain. By the time Grace turned 18, she had dropped out of school and taken jobs cleaning houses to support her younger sister Bella. When a friend told her about a job opening in California, working as a live-in maid for a billionaire family, Grace did not think twice. She packed her old suitcase, took a bus across the country, and arrived at the Rivers estate with nothing but hope in her heart. Mr. Daniel Rivers was one of the richest men in America. He was the CEO of Rivers Holdings, a tech empire that controlled everything from mobile apps to security software. He was known for being smart and powerful. He was also known for being private. Grace had seen him only a few times in person. He usually walked past her without a word, but she always noticed the sadness in his eyes. He looked like a man who carried too many secrets. That morning, Grace moved quietly from room to room. She fluffed pillows, wiped windows, and made sure every inch of the mansion sparkled. Other maids often whispered and laughed in the kitchen, but Grace kept to herself. She had learned that silence was safer. No one judged you if you stayed invisible. Later that afternoon, Grace sat by the servant window and looked outside. She saw cars driving up the long private driveway. Men in black suits were setting up tables on the back lawn. It looked like there would be another business dinner. These dinners were common at the Rivers mansion. Powerful people came and went. They smiled, shook hands, and signed deals worth millions. But Grace never paid attention to any of it. Until now, the night before, Grace had a dream. It was not like any dream she had ever had. It had been dark, cold. She was standing in the dining room. The long oak table was set with silver plates and golden cups. Laughter filled the air. Then suddenly it turned quiet. Everyone froze. Daniel Rivers stood up from his chair and reached for his throat. He gasped, fell to the ground. His eyes rolled back. Someone screamed. Then there was blood on the carpet. A glass shattered near her feet. Grace had woken up with tears on her face. Her hands were shaking. Her heart thumped so loudly she could hear in her ears. She sat up in her small bed in the maid's quarters and tried to catch her breath. It was just a dream, she told herself. Just a bad dream. But as the day moved forward and she watched the real dinner setup unfolding exactly like in the dream, she felt cold all over again. Grace walked into the kitchen and saw Mrs. Landry, the head maid, preparing the table list. "Mr. Rivers has a big guest tonight," she said. "Some investor from New York. They say this deal could push his company into a new level." Grace nodded but said nothing. Her throat was dry. Later, she stood near the pantry door and listened. She heard the cooks talk about the wine being served. She heard someone mention a new bottle of red from France. A rare one, imported just this week. Something in her stomach twisted. It was the same wine from her dream. The label was the same. The bottle was the same. She remembered it so clearly. The glass shattered in the dream. It was that wine. The wine had been poisoned. Grace felt the air leave her lungs. She could not ignore it anymore. She had to say something. She had to warn someone. But who would believe her? She was just a maid. She was nobody. If she spoke up, and she was wrong, she could lose her job. She could be sent away. She would have nothing left. She sat in the storage room and buried her face in her hands. What if it was not just a dream? What if she stayed silent and someone died? Could she live with that? She decided to speak, even if it cost her everything. That evening she waited until the dinner was about to begin. The sun was setting, and the candles were being lit. Grace took a deep breath and walked through the hallway to the main dining room. She had never stepped into the room during a formal dinner before. It was against every rule in the house. Mr. Rivers was standing near the head of the table. He was laughing with a man in a gray suit. The wine had just been poured. Grace stepped forward and spoke in a trembling voice. "Please, sir, do not drink the wine." Her words echoed through the room. Everyone turned and stared. Mr. Rivers narrowed his eyes. "What did you say?" Grace swallowed hard. "Please, sir, I had a dream. Last night, you drank that wine and collapsed. It felt so real. Please, just wait. Please test it first." The room was silent. Then someone scoffed. A woman laughed from the corner. Another guest whispered, "Is this some kind of prank?" Daniel stared at Grace. He studied her face. Then slowly he put the glass down. "Call security," one of the staff whispered. But Daniel raised his hand. "Wait," he said. He looked at Grace again. There was something in her eyes. Something honest. Something scared. He turned to his butler and said, "Test the wine." Now, everyone watched as a small testing kit was brought in. One of Mr. Rivers' security staff dipped the strip into the glass. Seconds passed. Then the color changed. "Sir, there's poison in this wine." The glass was switched. Someone tampered with it. Gasps filled the room. Daniel's face turned pale. He looked at Grace like he was seeing her for the first time. She had saved his life. But as the shock faded, another truth rose like a shadow in the room. Someone had tried to kill him. Someone inside this very house. And that dream, that terrifying dream, was just the beginning. Grace stood frozen in the middle of the dining room. Her hands were shaking. Her heart thudded in her chest. Everyone in the room was still looking at her. Some with fear, some with confusion, some with anger. Daniel Rivers had not moved. He stared at the wine glass as if it were a snake ready to strike again. The poison test was clear. The wine had been tampered with. Someone wanted him dead. Grace looked down. She felt small, ashamed, but she also felt something else. She had done the right thing. She had saved a life. Daniel finally turned to the butler. "No one leaves this house. Lock every door. Call the police. Call my head of security. I want this place sealed off now." The man in the gray suit who had been laughing earlier stepped forward. "Daniel, are you sure this is necessary? Maybe this is just a mix-up, a mistake in the kitchen." Daniel looked at him. His eyes were cold now. A mistake does not involve imported wine being poisoned and a staff member having a dream about it the night before. This is no mistake. Grace slowly backed toward the door. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to run. But Daniel stopped her. "Stay. You are not going anywhere." She looked up at him. "Sir, I did not mean to cause trouble. I only wanted to help." Daniel nodded. "And you did. You saved my life. Now I want to know how and why." Grace was taken to a small lounge room while police and private investigators began questioning everyone in the house. Servants were pulled aside. Guests were asked to stay in one of the many guest rooms. No one was allowed to leave the property. The news spread quickly among the staff. Some whispered that Grace had gone mad. Others said she was a witch. Some even said she was the one who planned the whole thing. Grace sat alone on a leather couch. She stared at her trembling hands. What had she done? She had followed her heart. But now she was at the center of a dangerous storm. Daniel walked into the room. He had changed into a dark shirt. His sleeves were rolled up. His face was calm, but his eyes were searching. "Tell me about your dream," he said as he sat across from her. Grace looked at him. "I saw you standing by the table. You raised your glass and drank. Then you began to cough. Your face turned red. You reached for your throat and fell. People screamed. I saw a man standing behind you, but I could not see his face. He looked down at you and smiled." Daniel leaned forward. "And you had this dream last night?" "Yes," she whispered. It felt so real. I could not shake it off. He nodded slowly. "Do you believe in visions?" Grace was quiet for a moment. "I believe that sometimes we are given warnings. Sometimes the heart knows things the eyes cannot see." Daniel stared at her. Then he stood up. "I do not believe in luck, and I do not believe in dreams. But today you saved my life. So I will listen to whatever you have to say." Grace felt her throat tighten. "Thank you, sir. I only wanted to do what was right." He walked toward the door, but turned around. "If someone inside this house did this, they will pay." Later that night, the investigators found something disturbing. The wine bottle had been opened and resealed. There were no fingerprints on the neck of the bottle, only a single smudge of latex. Daniel called in his personal head of security. Mason was a tall, broad man in his 40s with sharp eyes and a calm voice. He had worked with Daniel for over 10 years. Mason spoke quietly. "Sir, whoever did this is someone close. This was not random. The wine used was kept in the private wine room. Only a few people have access to that space." Daniel nodded. "I want names. I want every staff member and guest checked." The list was short. Mrs. Landry, the head maid, Chef Marco, Raymond the butler, Anna the sommelier, and a few others. But Grace remembered something. Something small. The day before her dream, she had seen Raymond the butler carrying a tray of glasses. He had looked nervous. He had dropped one and cursed under his breath. It had seemed normal then, but now it felt different. Grace told Mason what she saw. Raymond was called into the study for questioning. He denied everything. He claimed he had been preparing the tableware and had not touched the wine. But Grace noticed something. He kept glancing at the window, as if he wanted to run. Daniel watched him closely. "Is there something you are not telling us, Raymond?" "No, sir. Nothing at all." Grace stepped forward. "I saw you by the wine room yesterday. You had a key." Raymond froze. His hands clenched. Daniel nodded to Mason. "Search him. Search his room." What they found made everyone go silent. In Raymond's room, hidden behind a stack of books, was a small vial, half full. It was the same kind of poison used in the wine. Raymond was arrested on the spot. He screamed and kicked, but the evidence was clear. Daniel stood quietly. He looked at Grace. "You saved my life." Again. But as Raymond was dragged away, he shouted something that sent a chill through the room. "I was not working alone. You think this ends with me? You have no idea what you are dealing with." Daniel's face turned to stone. He looked at Mason. "Keep everyone in the house. We are not done yet." Grace stood still. Her heart pounded. The dream had saved a life, but it had also opened a door to something much darker. This was no longer just a warning. It was a beginning. A deadly betrayal had been uncovered. But who else was hiding behind those walls? And how deep did the danger go? The Rivers mansion no longer felt like a home. The laughter that once echoed through the halls was gone. The music had stopped. The lights felt colder. The walls seemed to whisper now. After Raymond's arrest, the mood inside the estate changed. The guests were uneasy. The staff moved with quiet feet. No one smiled. No one trusted anyone. Grace tried to return to her duties. She cleaned the same rooms, dusted the same windows, washed the same floors. But everything felt different. Eyes followed her wherever she went. Some looked at her with fear, some with jealousy, some with something darker. Late one evening, Grace walked into the laundry room to fold fresh towels. She found Anna, the sommelier, sitting in a corner. Her eyes were red. Her hands trembled as she lit a cigarette. "You should not be smoking in here," Grace said gently. Anna looked up. "Do you think I poisoned him too?" Grace blinked. No, I did not say that. But you thought it. Everyone does. I know how they look at me. I brought the wine in from France. That makes me guilty, right? Grace sighed. I am not here to accuse anyone. I just want to do my job and stay out of trouble. And leaned back. Then you should not have opened your mouth that night. Now everyone is scared. Now everyone is a suspect. Grace folded the towels and said nothing. She had done what she had to do. She would not apologize for that. Later that night, she was called to the study. Daniel was waiting by the fireplace. He held a photo in his hand. He waved for her to come in and sit down. Do you know who this is? He asked. Grace looked at the photo. It was a man in a suit, dark eyes, a calm smile. She shook her head. That is Raymond's brother. He worked for me 5 years ago. He stole company data and vanished. We never found him. Now Raymond shows up out of nowhere and tries to kill me. Grace stared at the photo. You think they were working together? Daniel nodded. I think someone is pulling strings from behind. Someone who wants to destroy everything I have built. Someone who is not afraid to kill to get it. Grace swallowed. Why would anyone want to hurt you? Daniel sat back. Money, power, revenge. Sometimes people wear masks for years before they show their real face. They sat in silence. The fire crackled. The room felt heavy. Daniel looked at her. You said your dream showed a man standing behind me. Could you describe him? Grace closed her eyes. She tried to remember. He was tall. His shoulders were broad. He wore black. His face was in shadow. But his eyes, they were cold, empty. Daniel leaned forward. Like this man. He showed another photo. This time it was clearer. The man wore sunglasses and stood next to a black car. He looked like security. Grace gasped. Yes, that is him. Daniel looked grim. That is Mason. Grace froze. The head of security. The man Daniel trusted with his life. There must be some mistake. She whispered. Mason was the one who searched Raymond. He found the poison. Or he planted it. Daniel said quietly. Grace looked at the photo again. Her hands trembled. She did not want to believe it. But the image from her dream had been clear. It was him. Daniel stood up. If Mason is involved, then we are in danger. He has access to every room, every camera, every lock in this house. Grace felt a chill run down her spine. What do we do now? Daniel walked to the window. We pretend we know nothing. We act normal. We keep our eyes open. And we wait. That night Grace lay in bed, unable to sleep. Her room felt colder. The shadows seemed longer. Every creak in the wall made her flinch. Around midnight she heard footsteps. Soft, careful. They stopped right outside her door. She held her breath. Her heart beat like a drum. Then the footsteps moved on. She waited another hour before falling asleep, but the dream returned. This time the dining room was empty. Blood stained the carpet. She saw Daniel lying still. His hand reached toward her. His lips moved, but no sound came out. Behind him stood Mason, smiling. Grace woke up with a scream. The next morning Daniel called a private meeting in the wine room. Only Grace and one other man were present. His name was Cole, a cybersecurity expert and Daniel's most trusted outside partner. I want to know who has been accessing the security feeds. Daniel said. Cole tapped on his laptop. Sir, someone has been deleting footage. Pieces of the camera logs from the hallway and kitchen were wiped 2 nights ago. Grace felt her stomach twist. That was the night of the poisoning. Cole looked up, and the person who did it used a master admin code. Only you and Mason have that access. Daniel said nothing. He only looked at Grace. We are going to catch him, he said, but we must be careful. The plan was set. They would pretend to trust Mason. Let him believe the danger had passed. They would bait him, let him feel safe. And when he struck again, they would be ready. Grace felt fear, but also strength. She was not just a maid anymore. She was part of something bigger, something dangerous. And her dreams, they were not just dreams anymore. They were warnings. They were messages. The mansion was full of secrets, but Grace was no longer afraid to uncover them. The days that followed felt like walking on broken glass. The Rivers mansion continued to function as if nothing had happened. Staff polished silverware. Chefs cooked meals. Guests came and went under careful eyes. But underneath it all, a silent war was building. Grace walked through the hallways every day with a fake calm on her face. She cleaned mirrors, watered plants, wiped dust from shelves. But every step she took was measured. Every glance was sharp. She was not just a maid now. She was watching, listening, waiting. Daniel played his part too. He gave orders, attended meetings, even laughed with Mason in the garden. But his mind was focused on the trap they were about to set. It started with a lie. Daniel called for a private dinner in the West Wing. Only a few trusted people were invited. Grace, Cole the cybersecurity expert, Mrs. Landry the head maid, and of course, Mason. We are celebrating a breakthrough deal. Daniel told them. Nothing fancy. Just good food and wine. Grace felt her skin crawl at the word wine. But she nodded and followed the plan. Earlier that morning, Cole had placed a hidden camera inside the new wine bottle. A tiny lens was buried under the seal. They had also planted fake documents in Daniel's study. Documents about a new partnership that could expose secrets someone might want to destroy. By nightfall, the table was set. Candles lit. A soft song played from the grand piano in the corner. Everything was perfect. Grace wore a clean black uniform. Her hands were steady, but inside her stomach turned. Mason arrived last. He smiled, shook hands, laughed like always, but his eyes never met Grace's for more than a second. Dinner began. Plates were served. Wine was poured. Daniel raised his glass. To new beginnings. Everyone toasted, except Grace. She watched. She waited. Halfway through the meal, Daniel stood up and excused himself. He left the room saying he needed to make a call. Minutes passed. Then Cole also stood up and left quietly. That left Mason, Mrs. Landry, and Grace. Grace pretended to pick up a plate. She stepped away to the side table. Just as she did, she saw Mason reach into his jacket. He pulled out a small object, a dropper. Grace's heart stopped. He looked around, then leaned over Daniel's wine glass and squeezed 2 drops into it. She stepped forward, too quickly, too loud. Mason turned and saw her. His face changed. Gone was the friendly mask. His eyes were cold, empty. "What are you doing here?" he said quietly. Grace tried to steady her voice. "Just clearing the table, sir." He smiled, but it was the kind of smile that hides a blade. "You are always in the wrong place at the wrong time, Grace." Before she could move, he grabbed her arm. His grip was tight, cruel. She gasped, "Let go of me." But Mason leaned close. "You think you are clever. You think you can outsmart me." Suddenly a voice shouted from behind, "Let her go." It was Daniel. He had returned with Cole and 2 guards. Mason turned, his eyes wide for first time. The camera in the wine bottle caught everything. Daniel said, "You are finished." Mason pulled a knife from his belt, quick as lightning. 1 guard moved, but not fast enough. Mason grabbed Grace and held the knife to her throat. "No one moves, or she dies." Grace froze. Her breath came in short, sharp bursts. She felt the cold blade on her skin. Daniel raised his hand. "Mason, you do not have to do this." Mason's voice was like gravel. "I trusted you. I protected you. And you turned on me. You do not deserve what you have." Daniel took a step forward. Then another. "You were like a brother to me." "Why?" Mason's eyes filled with hate. "You took everything. The company. The money, the power. You let my brother rot in prison while you walked free." Daniel stared. "Your brother stole from me. He betrayed the company. He betrayed me, and now you will pay for it." Mason shouted. But in that moment, Grace acted. She stomped on Mason's foot. Hard. He lost balance. The knife slipped. The guard moved, tackled him to the ground. The knife clattered across the floor. Grace fell to her knees, tears in her eyes. But she was safe. Mason was pinned, handcuffed, dragged away screaming. You think it is over. You have no idea what is coming. You are surrounded by snakes. Daniel helped Grace up. His hands were gentle. Are you all right? She nodded, barely able to speak. You saved me. Again, she looked into his eyes. You saved me too. The danger had passed. For now. But the words Mason shouted echoed in Daniel's ears. You are surrounded by snakes. Was there someone else? Another betrayal hiding in the walls of his empire. And what role would Grace play in the battles yet to come? For now the storm had calmed, but the clouds were still above them. And Grace knew her dreams were not done speaking yet. The sky over Los Angeles was heavy with clouds. Rain tapped gently against the glass windows of the Rivers mansion. Inside the house, Grace sat alone in her room, wrapped in a blanket. Her hands still trembled. Even though Mason was gone, her heart would not stop racing. She had almost died. Again, and she could still feel the blade near her throat, still hear his voice, still see his eyes full of rage. But it was not just fear that kept her awake. It was the dream, the new dream. After Mason was arrested, Grace had returned to her room and collapsed. Her body was tired. Her soul was drained. But as soon as her eyes closed, the dream returned, stronger than ever. This time she was not in the mansion. She was standing outside a tall glass building. Cars honked. People rushed past. Inside the building, she saw Daniel sitting behind a large desk. Then a loud crash shook the dream. The walls cracked. Fire spilled from the windows. She heard screaming, then saw a woman with long dark hair standing in the shadows. She turned and smiled, but her smile was wrong, cruel. Then the building exploded. Grace woke up with a scream. Sweat dripped down her back. Her sheets were soaked. This was not just a dream. It was another warning, another storm waiting to break. The next morning, Daniel called for her. He sat in the library surrounded by papers and laptops. Cole was beside him going through emails and security logs. Daniel looked tired. His voice was quiet. Grace, do you believe your dreams are trying to tell us something? Something real, not just symbols, but clear messages. She sat across from him and nodded. I do not know why I see these things, but they feel real. They feel like pieces of a puzzle. Daniel leaned forward. Last night, I got an anonymous email. No name, no trace, but it said this. The fire will start where your empire stands. He passed a note to Grace. She read the words. Her hands shook. She told them about her new dream, about the glass building, the explosion, the woman with the cold smile. Daniel froze. Glass building. My company's main headquarters is all glass. 20 floors. Downtown Los Angeles. Cole looked up. We need to evacuate the building. Now. But Daniel shook his head. If we panic, they win. We need to move carefully. Grace stood. Let me go there. Let me walk through the building. Maybe I will feel something. Maybe something will trigger another vision. Daniel stared at her. Are you sure? She nodded. If I can stop what is coming, I have to try. That afternoon, Grace and Cole drove downtown in a black SUV. The sky was still gray. The building stood tall, bright, cold. Security let them in. Grace walked slowly through each floor. She touched walls, studied the faces of workers, stood near the elevators. But nothing happened until she stepped into Daniel's office on the top floor. She froze near the desk. Her breath caught. Cole looked at her. Grace, are you all right? She stepped forward. The window. There's something about the window. She walked to the large glass wall that looked over the city. Her eyes scanned every corner. Then she saw it. A small black mark, no bigger than a coin, on the metal frame outside the window. Cole followed her gaze. He grabbed a pair of binoculars and looked closely. That is not a mark. That is a device. Within minutes, a bomb squad was called. The floor was cleared, Experts arrived and removed a tiny explosive device hidden in the frame. The building was minutes away from a tragedy. Grace had stopped it. Again, Daniel arrived at the scene just after the bomb was deactivated. He looked at Grace with eyes full of emotion. He did not say a word. He just pulled her into a hug. You saved more than my life this time. You saved hundreds. Grace felt tears rise in her eyes. She had never been hugged like that. Never felt this needed, this trusted, but her peace did not last. That night, another dream came. This time she saw the same woman. Long black hair, cold smile. She stood beside someone Grace could not see clearly, but they were in a room full of screens. Watching, laughing. Grace whispered in her sleep, "They are still watching. They are still coming." She woke up and wrote everything down. The next morning, she gave her notes to Daniel and Cole. Cole ran a face scan on the woman's description. He found something. Her name was Lydia Monroe, a former employee of Rivers Holdings, fired 3 years ago for fraud and hacking. She vanished after the trial, but she had worked closely with someone before she disappeared. Raymond, Daniel's eyes narrowed. This goes deeper than I thought. Cole tapped on his laptop. "Sir, there is more." Lydia's last known address was just outside Los Angeles, but she rented a new place a month ago under a fake name. It is close to the mansion. Daniel's voice was low. "She is here. She is near. She is planning something big." Grace whispered, "We are not done yet." The dream was not just a warning. It was a timeline, and they were running out of time. Daniel turned to Grace. "You are not just a maid. You are my guide now. I trust you more than anyone." Grace felt warmth rise in her chest. For the first time in her life, she was more than invisible. She was seen. She was heard. And she had a purpose. But the danger was far from over. Lydia was still out there, and her next move could destroy everything. The sky outside was bright, but inside Grace's heart a storm was growing. Every warning she gave came true. Every dream she had brought more danger. Daniel had tightened security around the mansion, guards at every gate, cameras in every corner. Cole had blocked all network entries from outside. The staff was limited, backgrounds rechecked, movements tracked. But still, a shadow hung over the house. It was a shadow of Lydia Monroe, the woman with the cold smile from Grace's dreams. Daniel walked into the study and found Grace staring at a photo. It was an old picture from the company's archives. Lydia stood in a group of workers, smiling, but her smile never reached her eyes. Daniel sat beside her. "You have not eaten today." Grace shook her head. "I have not been hungry." She traced Lydia's face with her finger. "I feel like I have seen her before, not just in my dreams. In real life, a long time ago." Daniel looked at her. "Have you?" Grace closed her eyes. She saw flashes, a small apartment, a broken table, a woman crying, and behind her, a dark hallway, someone watching from the shadows. Grace stood up quickly. "I need to go home." Daniel looked confused. "Home? You mean Alabama?" Grace nodded. "I have not been back since I left, but I think the answers are there. Something about these dreams. They are tied to my past, to something I buried." Daniel placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then we go together." The next morning, they boarded a private jet to Alabama. The flight was quiet. Grace stared out the window, her mind full of old memories. When they landed, the air felt heavy. Grace looked around the small town where she had grown up. Nothing had changed. The same cracked roads, the same rusted signs, the same silence. They drove to the place where her old home had once stood. It was gone, burned down years ago in a fire. But next door stood a familiar face, an old woman named Miss Ella. She had been her mother's closest friend. Miss Ella opened the door slowly. Her eyes widened when she saw Grace. "My God, is it really you?" Grace hugged her tightly. "I need to ask you something. About my mother. About something I think I forgot." They sat in the kitchen. The smell of boiled tea filled the room. Daniel stood quietly nearby. Grace looked into Miss Ella's eyes. When I was a little girl, did anything strange happen? Anyone come around asking questions? Anyone dangerous? Miss Ella sighed. There was a woman, tall, wore black. She came one night asking about your father. Said she was from a tech firm, but your mother told her to leave. Said she smelled trouble. Grace leaned forward. Do you remember her name? Ella shook her head. No, but she had black hair and a smile like ice. Grace froze. Lydia, it was her. Ella gasped. You know her. Grace nodded. She is the one trying to hurt us now. She has not stopped. She is still watching, still planning. Miss Ella looked shaken. Grace, your mother told me once. She had a dream about fire. She said she saw you crying. Alone. She said you had a gift. That dreams would speak to you if danger was near. Grace stared at her hands. She had always thought her dreams were just nightmares. But maybe they were something passed down. A warning passed from mother to daughter. Daniel stepped forward. We need to go. Now, on the drive back to the airport, Cole called. Sir, Lydia's fake address has been abandoned, but we picked up her signal again. It came from a small motel outside Los Angeles. She checked in under a fake name. Last night, Daniel looked at Grace. She is getting ready for something. Grace nodded. We need to stop her before she strikes again. They returned to California the next morning. The air felt different, thicker, tighter. At the mansion, Grace stood at the window, looking out at the hills. She saw a movement near the trees. She squinted, then stepped back. A woman stood at the edge of the woods, wearing black, hair long, eyes like frost. It was Lydia. She had come close. She was no longer hiding. Grace ran to tell Daniel. She is here. She is watching the house. Daniel called security. But by the time they reached the trees, she was gone. That night, Grace did not sleep. She lay awake with her eyes open, waiting, listening. At midnight, the lights flickered, then shut off completely. The house went dark. Grace sat up, her heart pounding. Then she heard it. Footsteps. Outside her door. The Rivers mansion was wrapped in silence. Power was out. Cameras down. Generators delayed. Only moonlight spilled through the windows. Soft and cold. Grace sat still in her bed. The air around her felt heavier. Her breath slowed. Her ears strained. Then she heard it again. Footsteps. Soft. Careful. Not like a guard. Not like staff. She stood up quietly. Moved to her door. Pressed her ear against the wood. The footsteps stopped. Right outside. Her hands trembled as she reached for a lamp, but it would not turn on. She grabbed a flashlight from her drawer. Turned it on. The beam flickered, then settled. She opened the door slowly. Peered into the hallway. Nothing. She stepped out. Her slippers silent on the wooden floor. Then, from the end of the hallway, a figure moved. A woman. Tall. Wearing black. Hair long and wild. Eyes cold like a winter storm. It was Lydia. Grace froze. Her body refused to move. Lydia raised her hand. A knife glinted in the light. Hello, Grace, she said softly. I have waited a long time to meet you properly. Grace stepped back, her voice barely a whisper. What do you want? Lydia smiled. So much like your mother. Same eyes. Same stubborn mouth. She had secrets you never knew. Secrets I helped bury. Grace shook her head. You are lying. Am I? Lydia said as she stepped closer. Did she ever tell you who your father really was? Did she tell you why she ran from the city? Why she hid in a broken house with no future? Grace's breath caught. She had never known her father, only that he left before she could speak his name. Lydia saw the confusion, the fear, and smiled wider. Your father worked for Rivers Holdings. He built the first version of the security software. He discovered something dangerous. He tried to expose it, but Daniel shut him down, called him a traitor, fired him. Your father left with a broken soul, and a pregnant wife. Grace whispered, "That is not true." "It is." Lydia said, "He died in a car fire 2 weeks later." The official story was an accident, but I know better. I know Daniel's company had everything to lose. Grace's head spun. She wanted to scream, to run, to cry. Lydia walked closer. "I tried to protect your family. I warned your mother. She did not listen. Now you are standing in the same place she did, and you will make the same choice." Grace stepped back again. "What choice?" "Join me," Lydia said. "Help me take down Daniel. Expose his empire. Make him pay for what he did to your family." Grace looked into her eyes. They were full of pain, but also poison. "I will not be your weapon," Grace said quietly. "I will not become what I hate." Lydia's smile vanished. "Then you are in my way." She raised a knife. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed down the hallway. Daniel and 2 guards appeared, guns drawn. Lights flicked back on. Lydia turned, threw a small smoke device to the ground. A cloud burst, covering her escape. By the time the smoke cleared, she was gone. Grace dropped to her knees, tears in her eyes. Daniel rushed to her. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, but her voice trembled. "She knew my mother. She knew my father." Daniel looked confused. "What do you mean?" She said, "My father worked for you, that he found something dangerous, that he tried to expose it." Daniel's face darkened. "I had no idea. I do not even remember every man we hired in the early days. But I promise you, I will find the truth." Grace looked up. "I need to know who I am. I need to know what she meant." Daniel helped her stand. "Then we find out, together." That night the mansion returned to normal. Lights on, security restored. But Grace could not rest. She stood by the window, looking at the trees. Somewhere out there, Lydia was waiting. And now, she had made it personal. Grace's heart was full of fire, not just fear, but purpose. She would find out what happened to her father. She would uncover every lie. She would not let the past control her future. This time, the dream would not lead her. She would lead the dream. The morning after Lydia's escape was cold. Rain swept over the mansion roof, like whispers of a forgotten truth. Grace stood on the balcony, her arms wrapped around herself, her eyes locked on the horizon. Inside her heart, 1,000 questions echoed. Was Lydia lying? Had her father truly worked for Daniel? Had he died because he knew too much? And if it was true, why had her mother never told her? Daniel entered the room quietly. He had not slept either. His eyes were tired, but his voice was steady. "Cole found something," he said. Grace turned. "What?" "A name," Daniel answered. "In the oldest server backups of the company. From the time we launched our first major software, there was a name listed as a system engineer. James L. No last name. Just L. Grace felt her breath stop. "My father's name was James. James Lawson." Daniel nodded. "I think that was him." He handed her a printed file. It had a record of James L's login history, internal reports, and one encrypted document titled Ghost Protocol. Grace sat down, her fingers trembling. "Can we open it?" Cole entered with a laptop. He placed it gently on the table. We decrypted part of it. It was buried under layers of code, like someone never wanted it to be found. The screen lit up. Text appeared slowly. Grace leaned forward, reading every line. Ghost Protocol was a private internal memo written by James Lawson. It warned about a dangerous backdoor in the original River software, a hidden flaw, one that allowed remote access to users' private data, emails, photos, bank accounts, everything. James had discovered it accidentally. He had sent the warning to 2 top engineers, but days later, he was fired, his login removed, and his access revoked. Daniel rubbed his forehead. "I never saw this file. I had no idea." Grace looked at him. "Do you believe me now? Do you believe Lydia might be telling the truth?" Daniel nodded slowly. "Yes, I believe you." Grace pointed at the file. Can we prove this was real? Can we use it to stop her? Cole answered, yes, but we must be careful. This file could destroy everything. It could be used as a weapon, not just against Daniel, but against thousands of users. It has power. Grace stood. We need to control the story. We need to protect the people. And we need to stop Lydia. Daniel agreed. I will call a press conference. I will speak the truth. But before that, we must prepare for her next move. That afternoon, they returned to the Rivers Holdings headquarters. The company was in chaos. Rumors had started to spread. Someone had leaked a message on social media. It claimed that the company had hidden security flaws, that millions were at risk. The message ended with the words, "The maid knows the truth." Grace felt the blood drain from her face. Daniel gritted his teeth. She is playing a dangerous game. She wants to turn you into the enemy, make you look like the traitor. Grace looked at the building. Let her try. I will not hide. They entered the office. Cole began scanning the network for more breaches. Daniel called his lawyers. Security tightened around the building. But Lydia was already a step ahead. That night, every screen in the building flickered. Security feeds, phones, tablets. Then a video appeared. Lydia, standing in front of a black flag, wearing the same cold smile. She spoke in a calm voice. Hello, America. I bring you the truth. For years, Rivers Holdings has been watching you, tracking your every move, through back doors created by their own engineers. They lied. They stole. They silenced the ones who tried to stop them. She paused, her eyes sharp. One of those people was James Lawson. He paid the price. Now his daughter works in the mansion of the man who betrayed him. A maid, a servant. But she has the truth. Grace gasped. She is turning the world against me. Daniel slammed his fist on the table. We need to end this. Cole shut down the system. The video stopped. Daniel looked at Grace. We need to face the media. We need to tell them everything. The truth. No lies. Grace nodded. Then let us do it. The next morning, Daniel and Grace appeared before the press. Flashes from cameras lit the stage. Whispers and rumors swirled through the air. Daniel spoke first. He admitted the flaw, the file, the betrayal. Then Grace stepped forward, her voice calm. I am not a spy. I am not a traitor. I am the daughter of a man who tried to do what was right. I only want the truth, and I will not let fear silence me. The room was quiet. Then one reporter asked, Do you believe Lydia will stop now? Grace looked into the camera. No, she will not stop. But neither will I. As the press conference ended, Daniel turned to Grace. You were born to lead, not just a dream. She smiled faintly. I am still dreaming. But now, I am wide awake. Later that night, as they returned to the mansion, Grace stood outside under stars. She felt the wind, heard the trees, and then she heard a voice. You spoke well today, but the war is not over. She turned quickly. Lydia stood by the gate, smiling, watching, then vanished into the darkness. The mansion was no longer a home. It was a fortress. Guards walked every hallway. Cameras watched every entrance. Doors were checked twice every hour. Yet it did not feel safe. Grace sat in the study with Daniel and Cole. They were surrounded by printed files, screens, old reports. The truth was finally out. The media had picked it up. Some believed them. Some did not. But now, the real war had begun. Lydia was no longer hiding. Her video had gone viral. People were angry. Investors were nervous. Daniel's company was shaking. Then, it happened. At exactly 3 in the morning, every light in the mansion flickered. Every device shut down, then came back on. But the screens were different. Every computer displayed one image. Lydia, her face glowing on a red background. A single line of text below her smile. You exposed a wound. Now bleed. Cole grabbed his laptop. He typed fast. Faster than Grace had ever seen. We are under full breach. He said, she is in the core systems. Daniel stood up. Can you stop it? I can try. But she came prepared. This is not just her. Someone from inside helped her plant the code. Grace felt her chest tighten. Someone from here. Cole nodded. The back door she used was not just from the old software. It was updated recently. That means someone in this house, in this team, is working with her. Daniel clenched his jaw. Who? Cole traced the signal. Watch the code dance across the screen. It came from a device registered under one of our trusted employees. Someone with access to executive controls. Grace stepped forward. Who is it? Cole stopped typing, then turned the screen. The name appeared in bold letters. Mrs. Landry, the head maid, the woman who had worked in the mansion longer than anyone else, the woman who trained Grace when she first arrived, the woman who had keys to every door, passwords to every system. Daniel whispered, No, she has been with me for over 15 years. Grace shook her head. I always thought something was off. She hated how close I got to you. She hated that I spoke up. Cole pulled more data. She sent emails to Lydia 6 months ago. Encrypted, buried under fake names. They planned everything. Even the dinner where the wine was poisoned. She was the one who distracted the staff while Mason acted. Daniel grabbed his phone. Security. Lock every room. Find Mrs. Landry. Now. But it was too late. A guard's voice came through the speaker. Sir, she is gone. She left the estate an hour ago. Before the breach. Daniel turned to Grace. We were so busy watching Lydia. We missed a real hand inside the fire. The breach worsened. Emails leaked. Private contracts exposed. Bank accounts froze. The company was collapsing. Grace stood at the center of the chaos. She should have felt powerless. But instead, she felt calm. I can stop her, she said. Daniel looked at her. How? In the dream, Grace whispered. I saw the fire, but I also saw water. It came from above, from the sky, from the clouds. Daniel nodded slowly. The cloud servers. Cole turned quickly. That is right. We still have one backup server untouched. It is offline, stored in a remote location. It holds a clean data. The original file's the truth. If we can upload it and lock her out, we reset the system. Grace stepped forward. Where is it? Cole answered. Arizona. Daniel grabbed his keys. Let us go. Within the hour, they boarded a private plane to the desert. The air was dry, hot, but Grace's mind was clear. They landed near an old server facility hidden underground. Guards waited at the gates. Cole entered Pasco. The doors opened. Inside was a quiet room, walls lined with blinking lights. The untouched data. Cole plugged in a drive, began the transfer. But then the screens flickered again. Lydia's face returned. Nice try. The lights dimmed. The server shook. She is here, Cole said. She is trying to fry the system remotely. Daniel grabbed his phone. We are running out of time. Grace stepped forward. Give me the drive. I will finish the upload manually. Cole hesitated. It is dangerous. There is no backup if it fails. Grace nodded. I know. She took the drive, entered the deep chamber. Alone, she followed Cole's instructions. Inserted the drive into the main port. Lights blinked. Numbers rolled across the screen. Upload complete. Outside, the power stabilized. The breach ended. The system locked Lydia out. Forever. She screamed from a final message. You will regret this. Then the screens went black. The war was over, but the damage remained. As they flew back to Los Angeles, Daniel looked at Grace. You saved more than just my life. You saved everything. She nodded, tears in her eyes. I did it for my father, for my mother, and for every person who trusted you. Daniel reached out. You are family now. You always will be. But Grace looked out the window. The battle was over, but the scars would remain. And Lydia, she may have lost this round, but Grace knew some shadows never disappear. 1 month later, the mansion felt different. No guards at every corner. No whispers of fear in the halls. No flickering lights from silent threats. The storm had passed, and in its place, peace had returned. Daniel stood at the window of his rebuilt office, overlooking the city that nearly turned on him. He had faced the world, admitted the truth, owned his mistakes. And now, the company was slowly recovering. Investors were returning. The media had shifted, and the people saw him not as a monster, but as a man who fought to make things right. And beside him, always, was Grace. She was no longer called the Maid. She was now his advisor, his closest ally, the woman who saw the fire before it began, and risked everything to put it out. Daniel turned to her as she entered the office, wearing a simple blue dress, hair tied back, eyes calm but strong. "You look like someone who belongs here," he said with a small smile. Grace smiled back. "I feel like I do." He walked over and handed her an envelope. "What is this?" she asked. "Something you have earned," Daniel said. Inside was a deed to a small home on the hills above the city, a place with gardens, a view, and peace. "It is yours," Daniel said. "A gift from me, and from your father." Grace's eyes filled with tears. "You did not have to. I wanted to," Daniel said. "You changed my life, Grace. You gave me something I thought I had lost forever, a reason to be better." Grace hugged him, a quiet tear rolling down her cheek. Later that day, she visited the grave of her father, a stone in a quiet cemetery outside the city. She placed flowers down, knelt, and whispered, "I know now. I understand. You were not weak. You were not wrong. You were brave. You were the first one who tried to save us." She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, her dream came peacefully. No fire, no shadows, just light. 3 days later, Grace received a call from Miss Ella in Alabama. "Grace, there is someone here asking for you. He says he is your uncle, your father's brother." Grace froze. "I thought he was gone. He says he left for your safety, that he could not protect your mother. But he wants to meet you now," Ella said softly. Grace booked a flight the same day. When she arrived, she saw a man standing outside Ella's house. Gray beard, sharp eyes, worn hands. He turned, and his eyes matched hers. "James," she said quietly. "No," he replied. "My name is Henry, your father's brother." They sat together under the old oak tree. He told her stories of her father's first job, of his dream to build a secure system that protected people, of the night he disappeared. They cried. They laughed. They healed. Grace returned to Los Angeles with something she never thought she would have again: family. At the mansion, Daniel had a new staff, new energy, new purpose. He had turned one of the upper rooms into a dream lab, a space where Grace could write, record her dreams, study them, and use them to help others. But one evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, Cole knocked on her door. "Grace, you need to see this." He showed her a screen. A signal had been picked up, not from Lydia, but from a new device, a new name. The signal was encrypted in a way only Lydia used. The location was unknown, but the message was clear. "Did you really think I would disappear that easily?" Grace stared at the screen, her heart calm, not afraid. She turned to Cole. "Then we stay ready." He nodded, and as the night fell over the city, Grace stood on the balcony, the wind in her hair, the stars above. She was no longer a maid. She was no longer alone. She was the woman who dreamed of fire and chose to walk through it, not to escape, but to guide others to the other side. And she was ready for whatever would come next. Thank you so much for watching. We truly appreciate your time and support. If you enjoyed the video, please give a thumbs up, and don't forget to leave a meaningful comment below. Let us know your thoughts, and tell us where you're watching from, and what time it is in your part of the world. It means a lot to us to hear from you. If you're new to the channel, make sure to hit that subscribe button for more amazing content like this. And to all our returning subscribers, Thank you for your continued support. We couldn't do this without you. Stay tuned for more exciting videos coming your way, and we'll see you in the next one.